So, of course, being a former Red, I hope they do it, but I am wary that City. I mean, De Bruyne, Aguero was back, wasn't he? Sterling's on it. He was. I mean, I know he didn't finish the chances, but he was lively, wasn't he? So they'll have to be careful. But I do think Van Dijk being in is a big help. He's made a real difference, don't you think?
Yeah, without doubt. Pep was forced to apologise to the fans after the game for not being able to win the title against his arch enemies.
I'm not going to deny that, but we know exactly which team we play. Is the second in the league. I am here to try to analyze, the feelings. I'm sorry for the fans, but I think they cannot have complaints about what we have done.
It was an incredible revelation, wasn't it? He said he was offered just on the eve of the game. He was offered Pogba in January. I think what? Pep Guardiola saying that, and then Pogba turns out at the start of the game. Incredible comeback from Manchester United, 2 goals. But when I heard that, I was like, what? This was Riola, wasn't it? Riola, the super agent. Do you think that inspired Pogba on, or just the game went right for him?
I think the game went right for him. Look, we're sort of doing a show, and for anyone that was listening, I think Pogba's best role is in an attacking area where he can really hurt teams with his ability to score goals, because he's good at getting in the box, he's powerful, he's got 2 good feet, he can shoot, he can see a pass as well. I think if you free him up from defensive responsibility, he should be getting 15-20 goals from that attacking midfielder. The problem is when you do sit him in a 2 and he has to get back and protect, that you lose him going the other way. But was it more about, was it a tactical change, or was it just top players saying we've got to get back in this game somehow and show some fighting spirit? Because I thought Sanchez's second half was incredible. I thought that was his best half in a United shirt. He showed why they paid the money for him, or giving him the wages. He was unbelievable. I think Sanchez is one of the best players I've seen in a long time at producing those final passes and moments in a game that change games. But if Pogba can keep getting in the box and keep getting in the areas where he can hurt teams, he could be a superstar. And we know potentially he's got that ability, but as a team they have to be more aggressive. And when they play like that, you wonder why they aren't challenging City, because they've got talent.
Yeah.
They've got a great squad.
Of course, with the Merseyside derby as well, Wayne Rooney was furious with Big Sam in the dugout, pulled off, hauled off. The expletives were coming out of Wayne's mouth. But Sam insists there's no issue between him and the player, although he does touch on it this morning about legs, Let's hear from Big Sam.
I would be disappointed, because he's an Evertonian through and through and through, and he'd been bought off in the derby. I wouldn't expect him to smile and laugh and say, all right, Gaffer, well done. I would expect a reaction from him, because that's how much he cares. That's fine by me.
Yeah, I think it was the Sun today talking about, his legs. He just wasn't getting around the pitch good enough.
I think if you in a central midfield position, Wayne Rooney is going to have certain games where his athleticism doesn't help him because of the powerful teams you play against now. But that means you've got to put people around him who can do a bit more of that type of work. What I would suggest is that he's the only ever midfielder, or when he plays in midfield, he's the only one who takes the ball in brave positions on the pitch, gets the ball off their back players and gets them playing. And I suppose my understanding is that his anger came from probably looking at those around him thinking, why am I coming off ahead of these when none of these have done anything more than
I agree, and I don't think Wayne's legs are any worse than the midfield he had around him.
Correct, I agree.
In fact, he was putting in more challenges than any other two.
Yeah, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. I've been there. I mean, I was lucky because when I was at Fulham and I played in that midfield role, similar to Wayne, and I had great legs around me, but there was times I came off late in games. I'd be looking around going, hold on, why me? He hasn't done that, fella next to me. But you do get
32 down, that's not old.
It's not old.
Families by making this a political tit-for-tat about police numbers. If you listen to the serious senior policing comments, like from Cressida Dick, they will say that this is a complex crime and that you cannot arrest your way out of this. What we need is what we're proposing in the serious violence strategy.
And I promise you, I will come on to this, but I do want, since you haven't seen the document, let me read a bit of it for you. The research says it's unlikely to be the factor that triggered the shift in serious violence, but maybe an underlying driver that has allowed the rise to continue. That's a serious allegation.
There are many different views that people have, which is why I commissioned this report to take a really detailed look at it. And look, let me say that one of the things that biggest falls in numbers have not seen the biggest rise in crime. I would say that in 2008, when we saw the largest amount of knife crime in London, police numbers were at an almost record high over the past few decades. Simply to say it's about police numbers is a mistake. We're not going to address the underlying problems, and that's what I'm interested in.
But isn't it the case, if you look at incidents of knife crime, I understand why, the base year you might pick is 2013-14, but if you look at...
I didn't, I said 2008.
Okay, well, but while incidents of knife crime have been rising substantially while numbers of police officers have been falling, isn't that the case?
2008, there were 143,000 police officers. We had the highest level of knife crime we'd had in decades. So I come back to you. You can parry me, I can parry you on these numbers. Ultimately, we're not helping the families and the communities. If we want to do that, I want a fact-filled, evidence-filled strategy. That's what I'm launching today, to make sure that we actually address it, rather than just leave these families to have a community in which there's high levels of knife crime. What we've seen is a complete change in crime. That's why we need to address it.
But you've also got, you say that's not a political tit for tat, but the Inspector of Constabulary, Sir Thomas Windsor's annual State of Policing, says, I have long-standing concerns that the bedrock of neighbourhood policing is being eroded. A dedicated neighbourhood policing team in the local community is able to build trust and confidence in a much deeper way than response officers will ever be able to. And what he's worried about, what many people are worried about, is the cuts in community support officers as well.
And of course, I agree entirely with Tom Windsor that we need to make sure that community policing and neighbourhood policing is absolutely at the centre of what police forces do.
Why have you cut it then?
I haven't cut it. It's up to different police and crime commissioners to make their decisions about how the money is spent. Some forces are increasing their number of PCSOs, some are cutting them in order to have more funds available for local policing of a different type. This is the type of policing we have now. It's up to the Met Commissioner in London and the Police and Crime Commissioner, Sadiq Khan, to decide how that money is spent. They will have their views about how best to support their local communities.
Well, Sadiq Khan's view, we spoke to him on the programme on Saturday, is very much as that police cuts is placing pressures on policing.
At the core of all good policing. And I'm pleased that Sadiq Khan has committed to increasing the number of police on the streets in London. He can raise another £50 million from the allowance we've given in terms of council tax. He's going to be putting another 1,000 police on the street, and I welcome that. We need to see more visible policing in London and other areas as well.
But isn't it the case that while police priorities have changed, and you've acknowledged this, they have greater pressures, shouldn't they be given greater resources, given the huge rise there's been in the reporting of sexual offences?
The priority for policing must always be about keeping their community safe, and my priority is about serious violence, because that, as you started off by saying, is absolutely at the core of what is most unnerving in terms of knife crime, in terms of families. And we have set out additional resources which are available for this year, because I recognised the new pressures that they're under.
I just want to talk to you about stop and search, because there's been a big debate about this, and some police officers feel there's been political pressure on them not to use these powers, emanating from Theresa May's own change in strategy.
And yet the stop and search has been so effective at actually stopping crime in the capital and in other cities. I talk regularly to police officers, and what they say to me is that they are happy to go out and do stop and search, and they understand now, there has been a bit of a learning process, that it has to be much more intelligent-led than it used to be in the past. One of the great changes that we've seen is the regular use of police-worn body cameras, which I supported early on, which means that the complaints against police have gone down in most areas between 70 and 80% where these cameras are worn. This is really significant. I want police to have all the confidence they can to be able to go ahead with stop and search, and they are increasingly having that.
You're launching a new crime strategy today that you've mentioned, plans for a new law to restrict access to the most dangerous offensive weapons. What kind of impact do you think that's likely to have? If you take knives, can't people just get a knife from a kitchen drawer? Does it matter about restricting them, ordering it on?
Listen, it all adds up. Having important legislative underpinning to our strategy is critical to being able to give police the powers that they need to enforce the changes, i.e., for instance, in terms of carrying knives. We're giving the police additional police powers. For instance, when people are arrested for carrying knives, Now, what we're doing is targeting funds at the people who are most likely to become victims of knife or indeed any other violent sort of crime. So I'm able to announce today that we're putting additional money into making sure that youth services and youth groups that provide targeted assistance to people can bid for them and try and get people to live knife-free lives. We've also put money into a campaign about knife-free to make sure that people realise through mentoring examples that there are opportunities out there to do other things. DCMS launched a youth investment fund at the end of last year with £40 million to help people find other areas to work in, develop skills instead of in knives area. But I have to mention one thing, if I may, that at the core of the strategy I'm launching today is a new approach to drugs. What we've discovered is that a larger proportion than before of homicides are caused by some sort of drug element. This is the change that needs addressing.
And just before we bring the interview to the end, I wanted to talk to you about one of the other very big stories, of course, that we're covering today, and that's the crisis in Syria, the chemical weapons attack. The Foreign Secretary said earlier this year that there would be a case for limited military action if there were uncontrovertible evidence of chemical attacks. Is this something the government is considering?
Well, the Foreign Secretary is right in his comments. The UN Security Council is, of course, meeting today. What we've seen overnight is another horrific piece of activity in Syria, hurting children and families, and we need to make sure that we have a strong international response.
So something the government hasn't ruled out, and would you be able to launch an attack without a parliamentary vote using prerogative powers?
I'm not going to be drawn on that. As I say, with the UN Security Council's meeting, we need a strong international response.
Amber Rudd, Home Secretary, many thanks indeed.
Thank you.
22 minutes past 8, and on that subject, what is Donald Trump going to do? The answer to that question is, of course, never entirely clear, not to his friends and not to his enemies either, which, of course, will work around everybody's favour. In a moment, we'll hear from David Miliband, from the Foreign Secretary, about what he sees as necessary and possible. Now, first, our North American editor, John Serpent, the President and his choices.
When Donald Trump says there will be a big price to pay, one assumes that kind of history will repeat itself and there will be military action, and certainly no one at the White House or from the National Security Council or anyone was saying that option is off the table. Add to that the fact that starting work today, a new National Security Advisor, John Bolton, who is very hawkish on Russia, very hawkish on Iran. I suppose the only variable that has changed from a year ago is that we've had Moscow saying in no uncertain terms, don't use this as a pretext to launch a military strike in Syria. The consequences would be dire.
Here's another thing that could have changed potentially is the willingness of Donald Trump to look to the United Nations, or at least to look to other allies then to act with him.
A year ago, Donald Trump kind of, surprised everybody with the speed at which he acted and launched those cruise missiles. Last night he had a conversation with President Macron of France, where they talked about the need for a strong international and coordinated response. Also, remember, Justin, it was only a week ago that Donald Trump made public his desire to pull American troops out of Syria altogether. Now, he could be getting in a lot deeper. And there are those people within the Republican Party as well, like Senator John McCain, who are saying, you gave Russia the impression you no longer cared. You gave Syria the impression you no longer cared about what happened there. Maybe this chemical weapons attack, if that's what it's proved to be, is a result of you saying you were no longer interested. And now suddenly he's saying there's a big price to pay, you cannot put up with this.
Is there also, though, among his own supporters, some of his core supporters, an unwillingness to get involved, a distrust of the kind of operations that might be considered now, that also weighs on him?
Yes, and I think